Hi, Ragaco. It's a pleasure speaking to you, pleasure engaging with you because I think we've recently been in communication, and I'm very interested to kind of hear more about yourself because I know you work for Media Monks, which is a sort of a behemoth in the advertising and media industry. But I'd be very interested to kind of hear from yourself about you and your role, and more importantly as well, which is probably the most fascinating part, you've got a global AI role.
Yes. Hi, Isa. Nice to meet you, and thank you for having me here and have this conversation. As you mentioned, I do work at Media Monks. I'm a creative. I'm a senior creative at the company. I studied advertising. I'm an art director, and for many years, I've been a very. I'm a keen fan of technology. I love technology. I consider myself a very techno optimist person. And so Media Monks, last year got named AI Agency of the Year by Newsweek. And almost 2 years ago, I started playing and toying around AI a little bit. And then I started jumping into projects, briefs. So first, I got named AI Ambassador of the Media Monks office in Buenos Aires. I'm one of the ambassadors. Each team has an ambassador that represents internally and externally the company, and also part of the LATAM AI Council because we have an AI Council for Media Monks in all LATAM where we make decisions about progress, about new tools, about clients, about internal teams, and how we can progress using artificial intelligence. So yes, we're doing a lot.
What excites you most about AI?
Oh, I think what excites me most. Well, this question has two roots, right? So the first root is that I love the concept of creativity, and I love the democratization of creativity. I think AI it's gonna open the doors for many creators around the world to create more easily. Not as hard as myself when I started advertising back in 2010, and I had to learn a lot of softwares, and I got to learn a lot of things. I think it's going to open the door for new creators that come. And also in the future, I love this concept of like, post work, the future of work, how we're going to automate everything, and how eventually I think, people always get scared about AI and they say, like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. And I always say, like, you might, but maybe you get more time for yourself. Maybe you get more time to figure out what you want to do with life. And I think that's a question most people don't do themselves. So I cheer for that.
And that's a very interesting thought because I think the media industry in particular had a bit of a tough year in terms
Yes.
of the sort of the number of layoffs. But what's the landscape like currently for talent in particular within the sort of the creative or the media or the advertising industry, and where do you
So
see that going in 2024 as well?
So I think you have two visions right now in media industry. So you have people that are 100% relying on artificial intelligence, and you have people that are using artificial intelligence but power with human craft. And I think that's the end goal. I think that's what we should be doing. Whenever I say like, oh, I can have an editor that can make AI, like I have an AI video editor and I can make all the videos, and it's like, yeah, it's going to be good. But if you have a human editor that knows about editing, he can probably make more videos more fast with AI, and he will make good stuff with good quality. So my regards with that is like, I think agencies and media industry is going to start looking for people that are more savvy, and they know more about artificial intelligence. I do know there's going to be some layoff. I know there's going to be some people that are going to be impacted by this technology. I know that. But I think every technology revolution represents a change in the work structure, and I think we're facing that. So whenever I was the other day with a friend, he's a photographer, and he was like, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my job because of AI. And I was like, you're going to lose your job if you keep yourself just as a photographer. But if you start using AI and you become an AI photographer, there's very highly chances you're going to keep your job, or you're going to even find more job. So I think it's a matter of perspective and understanding that the landscape is shifting. But the problem I think with companies and media is that, luckily I'm in Media Monks, that we're a very progressive company, and we really embrace the technology. But I feel many companies are kind of reluctant, or they go slow. And this technology goes so fast that if you hesitate a little bit, you get way behind. So I'm more confident that this year, 2024, more media companies are going to start integrating AI, and they're going to look for people that is more knowledgeable on AI.
You mentioned knowledge. How important is it for every member of staff or every person working in the creative industry to have a fundamental understanding of AI?
Oh, I think it's key. I don't think so. Here's my take with AI in general, because as you probably know, is that there's so many tools. Every day there's a new tool, and if you want to keep track of them, you're just gonna have an anxiety level that is just go over the roof of your house. So it's crazy. My take on this is you need to understand the basics. You need to understand the behind of the technologies. You need to understand who the big players are, and then you need to follow the landscape a little bit to understand. Whenever people ask me like, "Oh, you're great in stable diffusion, and you're great in making videos, and you're great in making images," and it's like, I'm great at some stuff. There's other stuff I'm not great, but I understand, because then when I work in the company, I can get with a video editor that he knows how to use that tool, so I can communicate with him in the same language, even though I do not use the tool. So whenever I think about knowledge in the media and the creative field, it's like there are so many tools that you need to choose your weapons, the ones you want to use. But it's always good to understand the whole scenario. So whatever you're dealing with other creatives or other companies, and they say something, you understand, even if you don't know how to use it. Like, I'm not a great guy in stable diffusion. I have used it a lot, but I don't consider myself great as I am with other tools. But I understand. So if I go into a conversation with a client or a team that is using stable diffusion, I know what they're talking about, even though I'm not great.
Yeah, and you mentioned stable diffusion.
Yes.
That's an example of a tool. So what's currently being used by the creative sector from an AI perspective?
Well, I think the usual suspects are, of course, ChatGPT 4, Midjourney, Runway, 11 Labs for audio, Stable Diffusion, Stable Video, and I think that's pretty much. Well, of course, you have all the Photoshop and Adobe capabilities integrated with all the Adobe suite, because most of the companies we were with Adobe, so we have been using them. But I think right now the biggest players in the scene is, first of all, Midjourney. There are some legalities about Midjourney because it's not open source. So when you're trying to create commercial rights about the things you created, you have to go through some legal process. You can do it, but it's so easy to craft a really good image. And when it comes to storyboarding, to presenting to clients, to creating boards, it's so easy. So I think Midjourney and Runway right now are leading the industry in terms of like where creatives are, and of course Stable Diffusion. But like I said, the limitation for me, Stable Diffusion, is like it's really hard at the beginning. The threshold to get in is complicated, and also you need a really big computer. So you need to have a video driver and a lot of stuff to make it work. So I think that's something that Stable Diffusion needs to work in the future to make it more easily for people to use.
So what you've done now is you've actually given me some ideas, but I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is how will that impact jobs? So how is that going to be? You've got talent in the industry where you've got all these tools, and what they learnt prior to just say beginning of 2023 may not be applicable to what can be done for 2024 and 2025 and up to 2020 and beyond. Considering the technology, we've just seen Sora being introduced last week by OpenAI,
Yes.
where video can be introduced within seconds, and you're getting very high quality video. Understandably, it's in its infancy. We're still very early stages in terms of how it can actually produce content, and also it's not available to everybody yet. But how do you see that impacting the creative industry, particularly focusing on the talent side and sort of the people, the skills they need?
So I think this is, for me, whenever I talk about this, it's like AI is not in the position of replacing someone yet. You may have automation in some areas, but in the creative field, you still need a person sometimes to craft ideas, to brainstorm, to come back and forward. So for me, AI in the creative sector is still a tool. So whenever I talk with people that is like, oh, I'm not sure if now what I'm going to do because my skill set is getting replaced by AI, it's like, no. You have a lot of background and knowledge, because that's what a lot of people ask me, like, aren't you afraid that a lot of people now can do what you do with AI? Like, they can be creative as you in just a app. And I'm like, yes, but they don't have my vision. They don't have my background. They don't have my artistic style. They might create stuff that looks like me, but it's never going to be like me. So I think that's what I try to push most creatives in the industry, to be like, embrace, because this is a new technology that is going to eventually, I think, is going to rule the world, and in the future, everybody's going to be using AI. And let's face it, people still want to talk to people. So a boss still want to have someone to complain if something goes wrong. If you just put a robot in there to do the things, who's going to complain to? So there's this service factor that you're providing a service, because the CEO of the company is not going to be handling millions of AI tools. He want to have someone to do that. So whenever I try to talk to people, it's like, you're still going to be a creative, you're still going to be an artist, but try to embrace the tool, because otherwise you're going to be like the graphic designers in the 80s that didn't want to use Photoshop because they like to do collage, and then they all got out of job because they were replaced by designers that did use Photoshop.
So then, at the end of the day, the question I'd ask is, do we get to a point where the skills needed to become a creative may not necessarily be something that you learn, but more that you do?
Yes, 100%. 100%. I mean, it's crazy because I learn a lot. I studied in the US, I studied in Argentina, I travel a lot, I learn a lot, but I realized that being a creative is more about doing than learning. You can learn, you can read all the history books about art, but if you never took a brush and a canvas and you painted, it doesn't work. Being a creative, it's putting your hands to work. So I think this tool, it's helping people with that. Like, it's lowering the barrier for people to start doing stuff. Because in the past, you will learn a lot about graphic design, a lot about animation. You will learn all this stuff, but then you have to sit down and do it, and many people won't. AI forces you to do it. Like, the only way to see your progress is to sit in the tool and create something. So I think that's kind of the way to go. Like, we're gonna see a lot of creators jumping in that probably don't have a lot of academic background, but they're gonna create amazing things.
And what I've, from my experiences when I've actually used some of these tools, is that the creativity is actually done by the tool. So they will create the content, they'll create what generative AI does, but the timeline, the storyboard, the formulation of a finished product is done by the individual, done by me, done by you, etc. Where we put our own vision into a product, and so into a prompt, and it actually creates that based on the vision that we want to produce. The final say is done by me or you or whoever the creative is, and that's kind of where the difference that I'm seeing in how I'm approaching AI. Quite interestingly, I'm not seeing it making me think any differently. So, for example, the work isn't any different, but it's how it's done is different.
In general of AI?
Yeah, the general AI, and also some of the creative stuff that I need is whatever I need in graphics and I do Mid-Journey. It's not like I'm not trawling through hundreds and thousands of images on Google Images. It's actually producing the content that I need quite quickly, rather than having to kind of think a lot longer. And I think the question I probably kind of end up on this conversation with yourself is AI a force for good then?
I think it is. I think so. What I think AI is actually raising the question here, and it's asking us, and it's raising the bar: is the system that we had great, or is there a better system? And should we embrace this new system? I don't think. I love my job. I'm a creative. I'm one of the luckiest person in the world that has the chance to do what they love. But I don't think the human purpose is just work. I think there's more about the concept of being human. So whenever they told me, I think AI is like the cusp of technology. When we created the wheel back in the early ages, it was to help us do a job better. Now we have created the ultimate tool that can take our jobs away. And people is afraid, and it's like we're afraid because nobody's coming up with the plan to, okay, what we're going to do? What is this new world we're facing? So for me, it's a force of good. The problem is that we need to speed the process a little bit to make sure we get there sooner than later, because a lot of people may not handle that middle part well. So we need to be conscious aware of that and consider the fact, when people ask me, are you afraid of AI? I say, no, I'm afraid of people and governments, because I feel that's the trickiest part to get this ball rolling, to get the politicians and governments to think about this and realize where we're heading. And people, because a lot of people is like, AI is going to kill us. And it's like, yeah, Hollywood sold you that idea, but I don't think we're heading that way. maybe let's sit down and talk a little bit. I think it's a really, really force of good. And I think as humanity, we should embrace this technology we were given to us.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Ragaco, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Isa, and it was always a pleasure.